story, of course, that we are leading with at the moment. Emergency services are on scene at a tavern in Scenery Park in East London. That's where 17 people were found dead.
20 people have died at the Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park in the Eastern Cape.
Reporting live right here in Scenery Park, just outside East London. It's such devastating news. A number of people, multiple deaths that have taken place early hours of this morning. A tavern called Enyobeni.
Is the story of the Enyobeni Tavern Massacre, an incident that shook the entire country of South Africa, a ripple that was felt throughout the world. A two-story structure known as the Enyobeni Tavern can be found in the residentially dense Scenery Park in East London, Eastern Cape. Locals had complained about the building because of its late opening times and noise from the building. Despite the fact that in South Africa, the legal drinking age is 18, minors were reportedly served alcohol at this tavern. After the incident, a Facebook post promoting the tavern's weekend party that ended with kuzofiwa, a party slang term meaning it's going to be a great time, attracted media attention because it literally translates as there will be death in isiXhosa and isiZulu. The grim scene. The South African Police Service said its officers were called to the Enyobeni Tavern in Scenery Park, a suburb on the edge of East London in the Eastern Cape province, on June 26 at 4 a.m. local time. When they arrived, they found 17 young people dead inside the club. 4 more would pass away while being taken to the hospital. Police said the victims ranged in age from 13 to 17, all under South Africa's legal drinking age of 18. Several people were killed in the Enyobeni Tavern as part of a celebration of hlanjwa, iphepha, meaning pens down, a tradition in South Africa marking the end of school exams. Initial reports claimed there had been a crush of people, but investigation authorities did not confirm this.
Having spoken to the people around here, they're saying that the place was flooded with a whole lot of people as they were celebrating. It was a birthday celebration. Having spoken to the people around, that people were outside, even others were inside. It was just a chaotic situation.
The bar's owner, who was not present when the deaths took place, claimed that security had called him at about 1 a.m. to alert him of people trying to force their way through a gate outside the tavern. The tavern's entertainment manager, Promise Matinise, claimed that some customers tried to ram their way inside because there wasn't enough staff to handle the crowding. When Matinise saw people falling while bouncers were unable to keep the large crowd under control, he claimed he contacted the business's owner after learning that the victims were dead. Videos of the location taken before the tragedy reveal that it was crowded with young people, many of whom appeared to be underage.
The tavern owner, Siakangela Ngevu, claims he wasn't there when the tragedy occurred. He says security guards called to notify him about the chaos at the house. The cause of death is unknown at this stage.
Mna ndifonelwe pha emva ko-1 ekuseni kusa ndifonelwa ngalamadoda ebepha egeyithini esithi mandibuye kukho ichaos apha endlini. Ndabe ke mna ke bendivizithele intwana yam eyolukileyo. Unfortunately ke seneveki eyi-1 yolukile. Ndabe ndiyokroba ke nenye ithaveni endiyiranayo ingokuphela kwale kuphela. Kubuchaotic kakhulu kuba ndifike mna kwalapha phandle kugcwele abantwana nabafananyana. Uyiloo nto usuka phaa ngakojingi uyoma phaa egeyithini. Abanye they were forcing themselves in, ufuna ungena ngenkani. Ndabonakala uba ke ngoku nee-security ezikho egeyithini zoyisakala kukontrola umthwamo wabantu. Unfortunately ke ii-security zethu uba ibizii-security ezinormal eziqhela uba khona every day, but because ke ngoku izolo umthamo wabantu bengaphezulu komthamo esiwulindeleyo, sabe ngosingalungiselanga wona ke ngoku thina boyisakala ke ngomthamo wabantu. Bendingekho mna andizokwazi uyidismisa into ethi ukhona umuntu ofake i-pepper spray because andiyazi nam unobangela wokufa kwabantu, kodwa ke uqinisekileyo kukubana mna bendingekho and ibingendimi. Andinakumdismisa u-underage because ke u-underage ukhe abe khona apha ngulo ke ngofika anqandwe phaa egeyithini angangeni, ungene only abantu abaselungelweni longena. Babakhona bona babalapha phandle and ke ngoku uyibaleka loo nto leyo uba xa bezile xa belapha phandle asinakuthi abezanga enyobeni, bazile enyobeni kodwa kabangenanga phakathi enyobeni kwindawo efanele uba bebangene kuyo, balapha phandle. Ndiyavelana nabo, buhlungu kakhulu okwenzekileyo, ibingezo njongo zam uba makwenzeke okwenzekileyo, so ndivelana nabo kakhulu. Ndiyacela makhe sithobeni imimoya, siye amapolisa alandele umthetho, sabona ke ngoku loo nto uba izawuphelela endlini. Azothi okwangoku akho nto sinokwazi uyenza.
A 17-year-old customer who was there at the scene that day claimed that security failed to get people to leave when the place got too crowded. He said that the security officer locked the doors and doused the crowd with a chemical such that they were unable to breathe and they suffocated for a long time and were pushing each other, but there was no use because some people were dying. It smelled like gas, according to reports. 11-year-old witness was heard claimed that while he was being held captive by other victims, he was robbed of his personal belongings. We were instructed to wear black and white, according to a different 17-year-old. A DJ was celebrating his birthday. Around midnight, while we were inside, someone sprayed pepper spray and we immediately fled. Although we were told it was the owner and that he wanted us to leave, we were unable to see who had used the pepper spray. We dispersed and went somewhere else. When we returned, the door was locked and the bouncer would not let us in because everything inside was already occupied. We tried moving through the crowd, shouting, "Please let us through," but others were shouting, "We are dying, guys. We are suffocating, and there are people who can't breathe." While she eventually fell unconscious, she reported that there was a strong smell of some type of spray in the air. We thought it was pepper spray, she said. At 4 a.m., a call was placed by a witness reporting that there were multiple deaths at the tavern. 17 victims, the youngest being 13, were found on the dance floor and in chairs, couches, and tables, with no obvious signs of injury. 2 victims died at a local clinic, and 2 more victims died while or after being evacuated to a hospital. 9 girls and 12 boys, aged between 13 and 17, died in the disaster. After emergency services were called, 4 people were taken to the hospital. but the cause of deaths and injuries was unclear as of 26 June, and an investigation had begun. Parents were asked to identify their children at a mortuary. Minister of Police Bheki Cele said, "It's a disaster. 21 of them. Too many."
Sibulela eli xesha lokuba nikwazile ukuzoba lapha xa besicele ngolo hlobo. Besi-indicatile that the minister will be here. Sizawucela ke ukunika uminister athethe nathi. Xa uminister ugqibile sicele ngumfundisi, siyayazi into yoba besekuthandazile. Uyawusenzela nje lo mthandazo wokuvala le ndlela.
These are the names of the pupils who died on the 26th of June 2022 at Enyobeni Tavern. Lithemba Velaphi, Mbulelo Khangile, Inathi Nkani, Kungentando Nzima, Ovayo Mateyise, Bongolethu Ncandana, Anathi Nqoza, Sinothando Mgangala, Simamkele Sobedwa. Aluncedo Monela, Simele Bolsiki, Esinako Sinahana, Oyena Ngoloyi, Lungile Begiso. Asamkele Thukude, Azizipho Zilindile, Inamandla Wequ, Lilitha Methuko, Sisanda Mahlahlaka, Sisekela Tshemese, and Thembinkosi Silwane. As of 27th June, 4 people were hospitalized in a critical condition. Other survivors were treated for backache, tight chests, vomiting, and headaches. Officers urged parents of survivors to take them to the hospital for a medical checkup. An investigation into the most likely reasons for the deaths was launched right after the incident. Toxicology labs in Cape Town received samples from the victims' bodies for analysis. In a statement about the incident, the South African Police Service said they would devote maximum resources to the investigation and asked the public to refrain from making assumptions about the cause of death. Police guarded the tavern scene in the days after the incident to prevent tampering.
Indeed, as the police will receive this report in the early hours of this morning on Sunday, that there are 17 children that have been found in a local tavern here in Suburb Park in East London. The circumstances surrounding this particular incident are not known at this stage. However, our detectives, as you can hear the noise around here, our detectives are busy combing the place to try and establish establish what could have happened over the night. We are investigating the case. We do not want to make any speculations at this stage. We must allow the investigation to continue so that at the end of the day, we are able to establish exactly what may have happened.
To the bylaws, where they allowed, the tavern wasn't allowed to operate till the early hours of the morning in such a way that we can have such an incident that have taken place.
What we do know at this stage is that the tavern is a legitimate tavern, but in terms of the closing times and whether people were allowed at that time and so on, that is going to form part of our investigation.
According to a provincial safety officer, the death was not likely caused by a stampede because there were no visible wounds. A spokesperson for the Provincial Community Safety Department of the Eastern Cape continued by saying that they were completely ruling out a stampede and that the most likely reason for the death was poison-related, citing CCTV footage that showed hookah pipes at the bar. Weziwe Tikana, the MEC for Safety for the Eastern Cape, said, "There were 3 young people who were coming to speak to us when we got to the scene, and they fainted along the way, ruling out a stampede. Since then, one of them passed away on the way to the hospital. This means that what they consumed remained in their bodies." Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, expressed his sympathy to the catastrophe's victims.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has conveyed his condolences to the families of the children who died at that tavern in Scenery Park. He's raised concerns about the reported circumstances under which the young people gathered at a venue which should be off limits to persons under the age of 18. Ramaphosa has called on police to investigate the incident, saying the law must take its course.
President Ramaphosa has expressed his condolences and concern at the death of 22 teenagers at a tavern in East London in the early hours of today. While the President awaits more information on the incident, his thoughts are with the families who have lost children, as well as families who are awaiting confirmation of how their children may have been affected. The President is, however, also concerned about the reported circumstances under which such young people were gathered at a venue which on the face of it should be off limits to persons under the age of 18. The President expects the law to take its course following investigations into the tragedy. This tragedy is made even more grave by its occurrence during Youth Month, a time during which we celebrate young people, advocate and advance opportunities for improved socio-economic conditions for the youth of our nation.
According to the spokesperson for the Eastern Cape Police, the cause was either something that was consumed or inhaled. According to the news reports from June 29th, the investigators believe that carbon monoxide poisoning was caused by a gasoline generator that was running in the bar following a local power outage. The chief medical officer at the nearby mortuary claimed that although autopsies have not yet been finished, the bodies displayed symptoms of chemical asphyxia. However, another representative from the Forensic Pathology Services stated it is extremely unlikely that the cause of death was due to the generator fumes. But we are still waiting for toxicology reports, she said. Despite the fact that a stampede had been ruled out, an official from the Eastern Cape Police Department of Health stated on July 6th that more time would be required to determine the cause of death. The tavern where 17 bodies were discovered was investigated by a forensic pathology team, and postmortems were performed the same day. On July 19th, it was revealed that all 21 of the dead had methanol in their bodies. Alcohol poisoning and carbon monoxide had, however, been ruled out as the cause of death. According to Dr. Lita Matiwane, the Provincial Deputy Director for Clinical Services for the Eastern Cape, authorities are still determining whether the detected levels of the toxic chemical were lethal or if another cause of death was present. The toxicology report's conclusions that the victims died of suffocations were rejected by the victims' families in September. The owner of the Enyobeni Tavern will face criminal charges according to the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, ECLB, which also announced that it will revoke the tavern's liquor license. The owner served alcohol to minors, blatantly violating the Liquor Act, according to board CEO Nombuyiselo Makhala. The Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality determined the tavern had been constructed unlawfully. Both a land use application and a departure for tavern operation at the site have not been received by the city. The tavern will either be demolished or not as of the 3rd of July 2022, depending on the findings of the ongoing investigation. The ECLB opened a criminal case against the club's owner and 2 employees for allegedly selling alcohol to minors, and they have since been detained. The owner and her husband, who managed the tavern, are accused of conspiring with or enabling their employees and agents to sell or supply alcohol to minors in 2 separate offenses.
Because we want to see justice being served towards whoever is supposed to be served to. So if Liquor Board could help us and make sure that he is closing everything so that at least he can feel that he was not supposed to be selling alcohol to young kids, and take control of all the Liquor Board policies, because he has broken the Liquor Board policies. But if it's business as usual, he won't feel that.
On the 28th of June, the Buffalo City South African National Civic Organization, Sanko branch, and the ANC Scenery Park branch met. Following the meeting, they held a night vigil in front of the tavern where they prayed for the victims who had died, as well as those who had become ill. Buffalo City Metropolitan Municipality promised to provide the victims with free grave sites and a nearby funeral home. Avbob, a business known in South Africa, promised to donate coffins, provide transportation, and help with burial. On the 29th of June, the government announced that autopsies had been performed on each victim and that samples had been sent to a lab in the Western Cape for additional investigation. Police gave the tavern owner and his wife access to the bar on the 30th of June so they could load bakkies with alcohol from the establishment. The owner let the media in, and they saw happy birthday balloons and broken chairs on the floor in the VIP area on the 2nd floor, according to their reports. In order to give families of the victims some closure, the Scenery Park Methodist Church prayed outside the structure that day and urged law enforcement to provide information on what caused the disaster. Thousands of people showed up for the 21 victims' mass funeral service on July 6th. Speakers at the event included President Cyril Ramaphosa and other dignitaries. Only 2 of the victims were buried that day, with the other 20 being reserved for later burial by their families in private ceremonies. Of the 21 coffins that were present at the service, 19 were empty, and there was a symbol. The Economic Freedom Fighters Party criticized the provincial government for holding a fake funeral in defiance of the family's wishes and with empty caskets, questioning how much money was spent on it. According to the family's requests, no actual body was ever displayed in public, according to a Metro spokesperson. The last victim was buried on Sunday, the 10th of July. Buffalo City has urged bars and clubs to prevent underage drinking by strictly enforcing entry requirements and requiring IDs. The Provincial Liquor Board has registered over 1,000 businesses in the metro area alone. 4 suspects have been accused of stealing the victims' belongings. A minor among them was given to his parents and will be dealt with in accordance with the Children's Act. The bail was declined for the other 3, who were all taken into custody. The Throb nightclub disaster in Chatsworth in 2000, which resulted in the death of 13 children, raised concerns from the National Youth Development Agency, the NYDA, about whether the nation had learned anything. According to the NYDA, people then questioned why minors were in a club, and now, more than 20 years later, the nation is dealing with a tragedy involving minors in a club, illustrating our lack of progress as the country. The NYDA urged parents to cooperate with law enforcement and report such underage activity in order to ensure a prompt and transparent investigation. The Minister of Police, Minister Becky Cele, shared some really harsh words with the parents.
Because mawumzali unengane no 13 years engeke ngishaya u12 ngishaya u1 ngishaya u2 ngishaya u3 uyabona mina ngitala lalelani lalelani angizili ukuthi sizonesana la, angizili ukuzothandwa yinina la, angizili ukuthi ngizokhuluma into enifuna ukuyizwa la. Bangafuna ukuyizwa, that's okay, lalelani. But into engikhulumayo mina umthetho nokuthi nabazali bane-responsibility. A 13-year-old ingekho endlini ulele uthi yiphi bese uvuka ekuseni uzoyifuna ungayiboni. I stay with my boy ose-university eCape Town. Ubuye ngo-11 tongue, sahlala phansi. Use-university, sahlala phansi. My boy, you don't come after 11 endlini. He's in university. Because as umzali, you have responsibility. So,
Sanko called on the government to declare Scenery Park a disaster area. Nomthunzi Mbiko, the regional treasurer for Buffalo City, claimed that the tavern had been the subject of prior complaints. We visited the Scenery Park police station many times complaining about the tavern and the ECLB. Additionally, the police and ECLB need to show up and explain to us how they issued the license to the tavern owner and who signed the paperwork. The concerned Tshwane Liquor Traders Association advocated raising the drinking age from 18 to 21 and called for enforcement against underage drinking. Whenever a tragedy of such magnitude occurs, after all is said and done, two questions always linger: what caused it and who is to blame? In this case, is it the South African law to blame for having the legal drinking age at only 18, what some argue is lower than most countries? Is it the South African Police Service for not enforcing the law? Is it the tavern owner for allowing minors to come into the club and drink alcohol? Is it the parents for not setting up curfew and acting irresponsible with regards to their children? Or is it the children themselves for sneaking out to an adult's establishment? Or is everyone to blame? It is so easy for misdirected blame to become misdirected anger.
The license needs to be rebuked from Lam to Anga operating anywhere. Kuna lack of responsibility. Now we need to find a solution, guys. Yes, no, not violence, but what are we?
No violence, guys. No violence. No violence. Please.
The other question, what caused it? It is interesting that even now in the making of this video, there's still no updates as to what caused the death of 21 teenagers. Till today, the real reason as to why 21 young people had to lose their lives so senselessly is still being withheld. The death of a child is every parent's nightmare. As the saying goes, no parent should be burying their child. But the death of 21 young children is every society's nightmare. And if the death is laced with mystery and unanswered question, it leaves a bitter taste to the country as a whole. How can a whole country comprehend or grieve the massacre of 21 children? Peace be still to the families and friends that lost a child on the 26th of June 2022, a day that will always be sadly remembered as the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy.